Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. The decision to draw this picture was made because, first of all, the little house is very cute and dainty, with walls covered in flowers. The wooden colored doors and windows are also very appealing. The design is simple, and there are no strong contrasting colors in the palette, making the overall tone very harmonious. Firstly, quickly sketch the outline with a pencil. Since the design is simple, the only considerations are the proportion of the entire house on the paper and the size of the doors and windows relative to the house. After the line drawing is completed, it's necessary to erase the extra lines. This will make the colors in the final painting appear cleaner. Finally, roughly sketch the shapes of the plants on the walls and the leaves behind the house. Now, use medium yellow to paint the first layer of the leaves color, and then while it's still wet, add some green to create a transition. Then, still using medium yellow, lay down a base color for the roof and use the wet-on-wet technique to gradually build up the layers and deepen the tones. Here, I used a mixture of raw sienna and burnt umber to create different shades of color for painting. Finally, I used burnt umber directly to deepen the layers. Next, I'll paint the windows, starting with a base color of medium yellow. Then, use burnt umber to paint the darker parts. Use the same method used for painting the leaves to paint the plants on the windowsill. The flowers on the wall are originally white, but I changed them to purple because I think it looks better. So, I painted 3 different shades of purple. I painted the flowers first and then the leaves, also using the wet-on-wet technique. I almost painted all the layers of these leaves in one go because watercolor paint becomes less vibrant and paler once it dries compared to when it's wet, so I might need to make some adjustments later. When painting this wooden flower pot, I waited until the first layer of color was relatively dry before adding deeper wood grain details. Use the same method to paint the remaining 2 windows. The base color of the door is also medium yellow, but since the sunlight is shining directly on it, I want to make the color of the door more vibrant. For the flower bed in the lower left corner, I started by painting the flowers and then added the leaves around each flower. This approach is easier than doing it the other way around. If I had painted the leaves first, unless the flowers were painted with masking fluid, I would have needed to use gouache to cover them. When I painted these leaves, I also painted them from light to dark. When painting this wooden flower bed, I added a touch of orange. Then I added a little bit of ochre. Then add a bit of dark gray, and you'll get a nice warm gray, which can be used to paint the stones at the bottom. By adding a little water to the original warm gray, you can achieve a beautiful light gray, which can be used to paint the ground. Use the same method to paint the flowers and green leaves in the lower right corner. For the flowers and green leaves on these two windowsills, I first painted the leaves and then added red flowers, allowing the red and green colors to blend naturally and slightly reduce the contrast. For the shadow on the door frame, I used medium yellow mixed with a bit of ochre and vermilion. For the deeper parts, add a bit of burnt umber. The grayish blue of the window is a mix of sky blue and gray, with the depth of the color adjusted by the amount of water used. Next, I'm going to paint the shadows on the walls. I plan to make them a grayish blue, with a hint of purple in them. First, dampen the area to be painted with clean water. Then quickly spread the grayish blue color over the area. If you're not quick enough, the area dampened with clean water will dry up quickly, and the blending effect will be compromised. For the areas that need to be darkened, it's also important to quickly add the color while the surface is still wet. At this point, I added a bit of gray and light purple. This is because the shadow areas not only have variations in depth but also slight changes in hue. Use the same method to paint the rest of the walls. Now that the window area is dry, you can use the dry brush technique to paint some lines to emphasize the shapes. For the darkest areas, I usually use black. If it seems too dark, you can try adding just a tiny bit of black to the burnt umber first. Use this color to outline the shape of the stone in the front. Now I'm preparing to paint the bricks on the ground in the very front. I plan to use a purplish red color. I mixed violet with some yellow and blue from the palette to create a slightly grayish purplish red, a less saturated purplish red, to paint the bricks on the ground. Then add a bit of ochre to add a layer of depth to the stone. Then apply a light grayish blue to reduce the contrast. Add some ochre to mix a warmer gray. The shadow beneath the windowsill is achieved by adding a dark gray. The flowers on the wall also need an additional layer of dark gray shadow to make the colors look richer. Finally, directly dip into black to paint the darkest shadows in the flower cluster. Then add some green to create a dark ink-like green for the darker parts of the leaves. Use sky blue mixed with water to paint the chimney. Then use pale violet to deepen the layers. Use burnt umber once more to deepen the shadows and define the shape of the roof. Paint the terminator line to give the roof a sense of thickness. The wooden box for flowers on the windowsill, being hidden under the shadow of the leaves, needs to be painted in a darker color. Some shadows should also be added to the door. The structure of the flower bed in the lower left corner also needs to be emphasized. Then directly use black to define the bricks beneath the flower bed. The shadows in the flower cluster on the right should also be darkened. Use dark gray once more to deepen the shadows on the white wall, this time using the dry brush technique without dampening the paper first. In some areas, I added a bit of sky blue to create a difference in hue. The lighter color is achieved by adding more water. Finally, use a waterproof black ink pen to add some lines, making the picture look richer and more interesting. If you're still here, thank you for watching. See you in the next video.